Welcome to Finance Revealed. Watch the complete video to discover new market secrets. Subscribe now.
Yeah, so 2013, I bought it and it went up 100% in a month. And in macro land, that doesn't happen. So I sold it. I was like, holy shit, I have no idea what this is, but things don't do that. But is now on my radar screen. I'd opened an account. I knew how to trade it. I knew what it was. So it was then on my radar screen. I then bought back in 2013 and then held it all the way through to 2017. 2017, the noise starts rising. And I'm not worried about FUD, but there was an S-curve moment. An S-curve moment is essentially when the entire basis of a project is questioned and it either survives it or doesn't. And I was not sure what the forks meant. They felt like something really wrong to me. And I didn't have the knowledge base. And actually, to be fair, nobody in the space knew what this was going to mean. You know, was Bitcoin Cash going to go further than Bitcoin? In the beginning, it looked like it might do. And this kind of stuff was like, no, I'm out. And yes, sure, those who stayed in, I mean, I'd made, I don't know, 10, 15 times my money at that point. I didn't have a huge amount in, but enough in to make it significant. And I took my money out and I was more than happy, and I never regretted the next rise up to 20,000. You know, I don't regret stuff like that. And then I was out of Bitcoin for a while. I remember going to the CoinDesk consensus event in New York City in early December of 2017, saying, I think Bitcoin's topped, and which was a bit of fortuitous timing. And then I kind of got out of the way for a while. I wasn't bearish on it. I just thought, well, you know, it's overdone itself. And it wasn't on my radar screen. There was plenty of macro stuff going on. The dollar was going up, oil markets collapsing. Just, there was fun to be had trading elsewhere. And then it was back in 2019, an old friend of mine that I've known for a long time, who's also a global macro investor subscriber for a very long time, Dan Tapiero, started pestering me. And he's a true macro guy. And he started pestering me saying, you need to look at Bitcoin again. I'm like, Dan, I'm busy. And he's like, no, you need to look at Bitcoin again. And Dan, I take very seriously. He's a really, really smart guy and a great macro thinker. So eventually I just gave up because I got bored of him pestering me. So I said, look, come on Real Vision and tell me what you're thinking. And he laid out this immaculate case of why he was accumulating a lot of Bitcoin. So after that, I started just doing technical analysis, waiting for price action. And it had been consolidating in this wide-ranging kind of wedge or triangle pattern for a period of time. Now, all the way through this whole thing from 2013 onwards, when I first discovered Bitcoin, I said, well, the next recession is when crypto and macro meet, because the next recession is going to create extreme outcomes for central banks, and people will not be comfortable with it, and it will completely accelerate adoption into this new digital world. And I've been talking about this parallel financial universe since 2013, and it was very clear to me where it was all going. And so it was March. I'd done a very good job predicting the COVID crisis and a recession that was coming anyway, and the acceleration of those two things into one point I knew was going to be really ugly, and I was very long bonds into that. And short equities, and did extremely well. But into that March sell-off, Bitcoin collapsed to the bottom of the range of that wedge. And that was it. That was my signal, because that chart pattern I'm usually pretty good with, figuring out that it means something. And it was the kind of time horizon pattern that works well for me. The halving had happened. Everything was in place. So I bought it, and then it broke the top of the wedge. And I said, right, that's the confirmation. So I added to it. And then as the next few months developed and Bitcoin accelerated, I started looking at the charts of Bitcoin versus other assets, because I have a finite amount of capital. And I'm like, where can I make the most returns? And I looked at it and realized that Bitcoin was about to outperform everything on earth, including the Fed balance sheet, i.e. the amount of monetary printing or debasement that's going on. And if that was the case, then it was suboptimal to have my money in any single other asset on earth except Bitcoin. So that was it. I put every single penny that I had and subsequently every bit of cash that I've had spare since that day into crypto. I then was 100% Bitcoin up until about October, November. And I'd been following the chart of ETH and the ETH Bitcoin cross. And I realized that Ethereum was likely to outperform Bitcoin. I've been a fan of ETH from the beginning. I thought the first phase would be the store of value, and then that would drive understanding of the broader crypto opportunities and what was going on. And DeFi had obviously just started taking off and was coming on the radar screens. And so I thought, okay. So I started allocating to ETH, reducing my Bitcoin, and then eventually had a larger weight in ETH than Bitcoin, and then started adding altcoins. And these were what I did. I took a dumb basket of cryptocurrencies and tokens because I couldn't pick one from the other. So I did the typical macro thing. I took an equally weighted basket of a bunch of large caps that basically broadly covered the space from DeFi to decentralized exchanges, etc. And then just bought those and sat on them, and they exploded higher as people started going out the risk curve, which is very typical in financial markets. So, let's say in equity market, bull markets, usually what happens, people buy the S&P or whatever first, then they start looking at smaller stocks, and then they start going to emerging markets, and then they end up in frontier markets. Really, really common. This is how you drive returns over the cycle. So that's what I did. And then I've started adapting that position even more so. I sold more Bitcoin, bought more ETH, and then also added to where I thought the macro bets lay in the space, as opposed to the dumb bet of all the altcoins in a basket. And the macro bet for me is social tokens and the metaverse, which is where I think this is all going. And that's probably a 5-year time horizon. It's like, this is where it's all going. Everything that's happening now, all the fighting over should you buy Bitcoin or not.